Hello and welcome to the initial video of my devlog series. My name is Tate. I've always wanted to make video games, and in this video series, I'll be making one from the ground up using the Godot engine. In this initial video, we'll be setting up the project from scratch, which will include planning the game as well. Sit back and I hope you enjoy. I've dabbled here and there in making video games, but I don't really have a lot of experience doing, like, completing a project. And so that's kind of what the goal of this whole devlog series is going to be. I'm going to be making a game from the ground up in Godot in order to try to get better at not only making the game itself, but also completing projects, because that's something that I've noticed that I have a really hard time with, is completing projects. I don't think once ever in all of my time dabbling with like a game development or anything like that, I've actually completed anything, let alone get it to like a playable state or even just like a demo. I for some reason, it's just not something that I've had much success with before. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I think it boils down to three things mainly. One being poor time management. Two being a lack of clear and actionable goals. And the third one is a general lack of accountability. You know, those three things I think have in the past really held me back from doing what I wanted to do, which is make a video game. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. You know, those are skills that are kind of difficult to develop for anybody, I feel like. And so I'm going to try to develop them now. And I'm making this video series in order to kind of document that process and how it goes for me. And as part of that, the first thing that I need to do in order to set myself up for success here is make my workspace clean. My workspace, of course, being my room, because I'm in an apartment, and space is at a premium. So I'm going to do that, and I'll see you in a minute. It might seem odd that I'm including this footage of me cleaning up my desk as part of the devlog series, but I'm doing that for a very specific reason. I really want to have this video series show the actual process that I go through in order to, you know, accomplish what we're trying to set out to do here. So I think cleaning the desk just in general was a pretty essential component so that I could put myself in the right headspace to be creative and do the creative work that that this project's going to demand of me here. Okay, so we're in a clean space now, and immediately things feel better. With that out of the way, let's get started with planning what we're going to do here. So I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos involving Diablo 2 challenge runs, and so an ARPG sounds kind of like a fun little thing to try out. So I'm in Obsidian here, and I have my game plan thing I'm drawing up, and this is basically just gonna be some notes. So what I'm thinking is we have like the main game area, some health UI and whatnot up here. And this is the purpose of this, really, is to just rough things out as basic as a way as possible, so that way when I actually do start to go and make the project, those are horrible hearts, by the way. I'm not an artist. When we do go try to rough the project out in Godot, I think it's going to be really handy to have some sort of like visual reference that we can use in order to, you know, kind of figure out where we're at, because looking at a blank canvas is just terrifying. So we have that. We'll have our character somewhere in the middle here, and I'm thinking, you know, this could be something like it's gonna be 2D, right? So I guess we'll write that 2D. And it'll be something like kind of the Vampire Survivors, overhead view. And just to start out, having the character in a space they can move around. Maybe there's like some grass or different terrain, or let's get fancy. Let's use there we go. Some grass, some different objects and stuff. And I think at the very beginning, just in order to get our framework of what we can build on, we'll just have our character here with some basic attacks. And, I can get some assets. There's plenty of free online assets that I can grab in order to go forward with that. But, basic attack, maybe you get like a sword, a couple weapons, a couple different types of weapons, and then just some enemies that can come in from off-screen. How am I going to denote an enemy here? We'll draw a little skull guy. The skull guys need a health bar, right? So does player, probably. So let's get that down. Just some basic stuff. Maybe, you know what? Maybe the player's health bar can be green instead. I feel like there needs to be some kind of progression in place so that it doesn't get too boring too fast. So maybe you could do the Vampire Survivors thing where you get enough XP and then get like a selection of stuff, but I wonder if there's something more creative we can do. Maybe enemies will drop loot, maybe certain types of enemies. Okay, hold on, let me write some of this down. So that way, if you're trying to go after like a certain kind of build, like say for example you're trying to build an archer, and there are certain enemies which are more going to be more likely to drop things related to that, maybe you go after those enemies first. I'm thinking actually, if we're going to do it that way, we maybe want to have like some sort of map to indicate different regions up here, maybe. And have different areas marked for different enemy types that you would go after. And that way, your character's build might be determined, or if you're going for a specific character build, then you have to go to kind of specific environments. That way, if you're going to be... That way, there's a little bit more replayability there, I guess, a little bit. With, like, say, you start out, you want to make a fighter guy or whatever. You need to go to, like, mountain areas because that's where the goblins are, and they drop melee-focused loot. Whereas if you're going for, like, a ranger, maybe you go to the swamp area in order to do that. Maybe if you want to do a hybrid character, you can do both of that. I'm just spitballing here. These early stages, I think, is going to be where a lot of this exploration happens, and where you really want to just let yourself come up with all kinds of crazy stuff. I have... it would be interesting to see how this develops, because if I can make this base work, and that's all we're building right now, that's all we're planning for, is this base. If I can make this base work, then we can build other systems on top of that, which would be fun. But I like this base idea, where you have your character, and you have to go to the different regions, and that way you can build your character up by going to these specific areas. Maybe you don't have the whole map, and as you explore, you'll find like a map pedestal, which will give you, like we'll say, well, the little pedestal there, like a little Roman or Greek thing or whatever, and it has the map on it, or a map fragment. And finding these would be very valuable, because then maybe you could ask it, like it's a magical map fragment. You can ask it for a specific region, and it would kind of point you the right direction, or fill out your map with the nearest mountain region or swamp region, or however many biomes we're gonna go for. So that for character progression I like. And then I guess for now, let's not get too complicated. We could just have we can have the enemies get harder over time, or maybe more difficult the further away from the initial spawn point, the initial like town area. Um, Monsters get more difficult the further away you go, and eventually you'll just exhaust all of the loot in the immediate surrounding area. Um, so you have to go out further and further, and then you just kind of see how long you can make it. I think I like that. I think that's what we'll go for. Okay, so right now, our basic idea. Player starts out in town. Player hunts and kills mobs of specific types for class-focused loot, and those specific types come from specific regions, as we talked about earlier. The player has to go out further and further as resources, i.e. monsters in this case, get scarce. And then the objective is to just see how strong you can get, see how far you can take that progression. And maybe we have certain things to keep that progression interesting, right? So, but as far as the basic idea goes, I like that. I'm going to go ahead and save this document here. As of right now, I think that's a pretty solid start. So the next step is to get into Godot and start making it happen. So I guess I'll see you in a second. One thing I definitely have on my side here, just because I've started so many projects without actually finishing them, is I have a pretty good idea about how to kind of start things off here. So we're in Godot now. We're making our project. Flip over to 2D. We get our main node here, which for me it makes the most sense to call it world, just because that's where everything else is going to kind of live underneath this world node. Immediately save it. We're good. And now we need to get the docs open, just so that we have that handy reference ready and available to us right from the get-go. One of the things I thought was cool here is there's like a bunch of different little guides on the actual Godot docs homepage for various levels of, uh, game development skill. And so that might be kind of a cool thing for people to explore. After that, we go ahead and get some assets. This is something that's a little bit new to me, is getting assets for games. I feel like one of the things that really held me back a lot when I was trying to do development stuff before is there was this inherent need I had in order to make everything myself. And I feel like if you're just trying to get something off the ground, running around and getting some assets is going to be like a way better use of your time, just because there's so many available and a lot of it is free or very cheap. So here we go. We get the assets. We download them. We put them, unzip them, get them in the right spot. We're basically just moving things into Godot at this point, so that we can get started on the actual development of the game. Now, I am pretty new to working with assets. Like I said before, I really tried to make everything myself, and as a result, never really got far. So I'm looking at the docs here in order to try to understand like how using tile sets work. The tile set that I downloaded was called Jawbreaker or something. It was just on itch.io. It was free and it looked fine. And we're not really going for perfection here. But as you can see, I kind of messed up the importing process. I didn't know initially what was going on, but eventually I found out I had to set the tile size in the actual tile set thing to 8x8 because that's what the tiles were. That's the size of the actual tiles. And once I did that, things started lining up correctly. I was able to start drawing to my heart's content, making lines, making boxes, and just kind of putting down some sort of framework because, like I said before, looking at a blank canvas is absolutely terrifying. You don't want to be looking at a blank canvas. You have to get something on the page, on the screen, in the node, whatever. Because if you're sitting there looking at a blank canvas, you're going to get overwhelmed because you're like, what do I do first? What you do first is just put garbage on the screen, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like playing around with the different tiles that I have. Just put garbage on the screen. Just get it on there. Now, one thing I noticed when I was going through that process is the textures look kind of fuzzy. I'm not sure if it's coming across on the screen as well as I would like, but I had to Google small textures blurry and figure out what was going on. It turns out Godot has linear texture filtering enabled by default, and you can disable it in the project settings. So if you go to project settings, go down to rendering textures, you want to set it from linear to nearest, so it doesn't try to accent like auto alias. I'm not sure exactly what's happening behind the scenes, but once I changed that setting project wide, then things started to look better. And I think changing it project wide for this particular project is going to be ideal because most of the textures I'm going to be using are going to be kind of small anyway. And now comes the time where we try to actually make the character move around, and we actually get into a little bit of the scripting portion of this. I have cut a lot of this footage because a lot of it was me simply staring at the code, trying to figure out what it was doing initially. And I know that's kind of funny just because this is like essentially a blank template code. This mode is suitable for top-down games, apparently. But when I play the game right now... Goodbye. It turns out the actual answer was to just turn off gravity, or just ignore it. We just ignored it. It's fine. After many trials and tribulations, we finally got to a situation where I had a character which could move around the screen using the arrow keys. This is a huge success. So with the character actually moving out of the way, the next thing was to make sure that the animations actually matched the character's state. And, it went kind of like this. I'm trying to think of a way to manage the animations in a way that it'll play the walk when walking, but as soon as you stop, it goes back to the idle animation. And I have it set so that... Oh, wait, that's gonna... I'm not sure why this is happening. It's like not working when I go diagonal directions. It's also not stopping when I stop, so something's wrong with my logic, I think. Oh, it's only happening when you go up and down. Left and right is fine, but up and down is... Okay, up and down is working now for some reason. For some reason, left and right is not working still. So I'll have to double check to see why that is. We're getting closer. And that one little line took an hour of my life away. Very good. Okay, so we have a working character state now. I think the next thing I want to do is add some basic attacks. I got a bunch of little animated effects, so let's see what we can do with that. So now we go through the process of adding an attack, which kind of rehashes on a lot of the stuff that we've done already. We went through and we added sprite animations for the various different attacks. Part of that process involves, being able to get the global position from the mouse, and I had made a script to do that once before with one of my other projects, because I have started 70 billion projects and never finished a single one. I probably have something for everything. Here we see I'm making a little pointer so that we can kind of see where the mouse should be pointed at. And this was one of the assets. I didn't actually download an arrow asset for this. I just kind of made one because it was kind of simple. But we go through, we do that. We add the little animation for it. We add it to the character. Just kind of for debug purposes, so we can see where the mouse should be pointing at, or at least where things should be pointing at. Things obviously weren't working right at this point. I had to go and make sure that the things were being instantiated correctly, and make sure that things were deleting themselves after they were no longer useful. We eventually had a character who could use the mouse to aim a direction and fire. In the case of our melee guy, it's just one little quick burst thing. But essentially, that's where we're at this point, at the end of week 1 of development. We have a character who has proper animations, who can move around, who can attack, who can hit things. There's a hitbox there, so the next steps are adding enemies and seeing if we can do damage to them. That's our next goal. We need to add some enemies and do damage to them. Basic stuff, but again, we're building the foundation, so it's not super in-depth. We're just trying to get something to work. Oh, this was cool. I actually remember this. I set the attack speed variable to 0, which basically means that there's no attack delay. And so if you hold the left mouse button, then you do this crazy arc thing. It's a pretty cool little effect, and I actually think that maybe we can use that at some point in the future for something else, but I'm not sure right now. I guess we'll find out. And that's pretty much where we're at. We have a basic character which moves around and which can instantiate an attack against enemies once we do add enemies, and that'll be part of our goals, right? So one of the things I want to do is make sure that we have some goals for the next week of development, right? So one goal, add an enemy, which can be damaged, which will try to attack the player, etc. Another goal is to expand the game world in some way. I'm imagining that it's going to be procedurally generated, but that in and of itself might be a whole can of worms, so I'm not going to really be too upset if we can't get that working 100% how we want it to right off the bat. I'll keep you up to date as I continue to work on this project. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and bye-bye.